Welcome, gamers, to Basement Arcade Pause Menu, the show where we hit pause, sit back, and just chill. I am your host, Ben Magnet, and today on the show, I have another friend of mine from Twitter. I swear, pretty much almost like 99% of the guests I have on the show are friends of mine from Twitter. She is someone who's in the video game world is something we don't really think about, but we definitely go and praise to the high heavens because they're the ones who actually do the thing called fixing our consoles. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Retro Zoe. Zoe, how are you today?
Hello, I'm doing all right. Pretty much just relaxing on a Saturday, so doing pretty well.
That's good. That is good to hear. So, you fix video game consoles, and now I feel like that's something that a lot of like gaming YouTubers, or there are people who have shows on who do stuff on YouTube who fix video game consoles. But I'm curious, how did you get into fixing video game consoles?
Um, it kind of started out more as just a necessity than anything. Started with cleaning things because that was the first and most basic step, and then it was like, well, I'm inside and this part is loose or something's not like looking quite right. So it'd be like, okay, well, I'm going to go to the hardware store, get a cheap soldering iron, and see what I can do, and just kind of kept progressing my skill level from there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so essentially, it's just like, I mean, we'll probably go into like the techniques and the different tools, because to be perfectly honest, when it comes to fixing video game consoles, that is like it flies right over my head. Like talking about playing video games, and just having a good time with them, I feel that a lot of people's like, oh yeah, that's my wheelhouse. But the second we get to the more technical side, that's where things get a little tricky. So going into your background a little bit, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Do you have did you go to school for technical engineering, or I don't even know if that's the proper term for it, but what led you to exactly going to, hey, I like working with video games and I actually like fixing video games, besides just like, man, I need to clean this part and this thing's loose?
I've always like kind of opening things and tinkering and seeing how they worked inside. At a point, I got into building PCs and stuff, so you start to get a little comfortable around electrical components and stuff like that, and get an idea of how to handle them. And then as I collected more, I'd come across things that weren't in working order and stuff like that, and they would just get put away in the closet until I could figure out what to do with them, other than just like a shell swap or something like that. And yeah, just kind of decided it was probably time to start learning how to at least do the basic kind of maintenance for them, kind of preventative maintenance, and that kept progressing from there. And yeah, as far as any kind of training or anything, no, it's a lot of reading, a lot of YouTube. I do have a friend that solders and was teaching me how to do it and stuff, and some of the basics of electrical components and engineering and things.
Okay. How long would you say you've been fixing game consoles?
Probably started about 2.5, maybe 3 years ago. So relatively recent, and I'm definitely still learning. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's actually so because I've said I've said the story before of quite a few times on the show. Whereas I had a Sega Dreamcast as a kid, and I've had it for years. And then one day I take it to my friend's house who's never played a Dreamcast. I hooked it up, and it doesn't work. There's power, but the disc won't read. And unfortunately, I'm thinking, oh, it's just broken. It's never going to work again. So instead of actually taking it somewhere to get fixed, I donated to a Goodwill along with my entire collection of Dreamcast games, which now, let's just say, current me wants to smack old me upside the head, because everyone's saying it's like, oh, you could just fix the laser. I'm like, but I don't know how to do that.
I would have done the same thing years ago. It would have been passed on to somebody else or given away or something like that.
So ballpark, like, reckon how many video game consoles, like, because you don't just fix consoles, you also fix controllers, you fix a whole bunch of things, because on Twitter you're constantly showing off your and I love it because you're not just showing off video game consoles, you're also showing off old school CRTs. You have a lot of really cool retro computer systems out there too. And out of all of them, it's like, which one, like, how many consoles would you say you've personally fixed?
At least a dozen, definitely at least a dozen. Is probably more than that, depending on just how you define a fix, I guess, where some things are just, you open it up and, you heat up some solder and everything and it kind of works, versus, people doing like a full recap or something like that. But yeah, dozen to 20. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay. Did you so all this so okay, now follow up question to that. When you get a brand new piece of tech, okay, maybe not brand new, but new to you, do you instantly like say for example, you were to get okay, here's a good example. You were to get a Spectrum from England, right? Would you instantly crack that sucker open just to see what is inside to make it tick, or would you just like leave it alone and not touch it until say it's like, you know what, I think I can. It's like, you know what, this shift key is kind of loose. I'm going to crack it open to fix it. Do you crack it open right away, or do you wait a little while until you need to go in there?
At this point, I open everything the moment I bring it home. Yeah, everything gets opened and cleaned at the bare minimum, and then that's a good time to look at it and see if there's any noticeable, obvious problems. And then if it's something I can fix, I'm going to put it to the side to fix in a couple of days. And if it's something a little beyond my skill level at the moment, it goes into kind of a bin to be looked at later down the road.
Okay, because I can only imagine, like, say you were to come home, like you and your fiance were to come home with a PlayStation 5, where you just like, I'm gonna crack that sucker open because I don't know, like if I were to bring home that brand new system like that, it's like no.
Now, that one I wouldn't, only because it's still got a manufacturer warranty, but after the first year, yes, I would open it up and at the very least clean it out because PlayStations are notorious for getting dirty inside.
Yeah. Okay, you can't see it because in my dresser, my PlayStation 2 are in there. And when I moved last year, I was packing all my systems up, and I saw the fan on the back of my PS2 because I have a first generation PlayStation 2. Yikes! Is the only way I could say it, and I don't want to talk about it because it's not hooked up right now.
Two of the fat PS2s and two of the slims, and yeah, I've opened them all and had to clean the fans, and that's honestly one of the more time-consuming things you can do, even worse than some of the repairs. Just trying to get inside and get in between all the blades and everything.
Now, there's one fix that I remember my family actually trying. So you might not, I don't know if you know about this, but the original, like the first gen, the fat PS2s, mine has had a very lingering problem, which caused me to not buy certain games because those games were blue discs. Like if you look on the back of the box, it says a compact disc instead of a DVD-ROM. Because my PS2 it's a coin toss. It's like some days it would work, some days it wouldn't. And do you have like a good fix for that? Because I remember back on Tech TV before it became G4, they said, oh, just here's the guts of the PS2. Here's a little gear. You just move it and then you turn it on. And if it works, you're good. You don't have to fix it. But of course, we tried it and it didn't work.
I did not. That was the same with my childhood PlayStation 2 that I grew up with. It would not play the blue discs whatsoever. I haven't come across one of those blue discs in years since I really started collecting a little more heavily, so it hasn't quite come up for me yet. So yeah, I'm actually not too sure what the fix for that one would be.
Because I have no idea, because I know a friend of mine had a PS2 Slim and he had a few blue discs in his collection, and of course those worked absolutely perfectly fine. I don't know if it's just maybe because my PS2 was an older model and sometimes the software or the CPU, I don't know if it had to do with the CPU or whatnot. Once again, I'm not super technical. All I just know is that I put disc in system decides to not work. Sometimes it does, but most of the time it doesn't.
Yep, definitely remember that.
Yeah, bloody annoying. I mean, and I had to not only just teach my parents which system to buy for my brother and I also had to show them, it's like, this part means good, this part is bad.
I'm pretty sure I did the exact same thing back then, where it was like, no, make sure it doesn't say the CD-ROM on the back.
Man, those were the days. I remember the first time we really had to fight them is for the gun con games. Like we had Time Crisis 2 and Ninja Assassin. First of all, we didn't know where to buy those games because like Target, Walmart, and even GameStop didn't have them unless it was like a find. We find a store and then we bring it home. Like, oh wow, the disc is blue. And sometimes Time Crisis 2 would work, and then other times it wouldn't. And it would just drive us up a wall.
I also had Time Crisis 2 and had that exact same issue. Yep, I remember that very fondly.
Oh, man, that one birthday though, I did get Time Crisis 3 for the PS2, and thank God it was a DVD-ROM. Like right when I opened the box, I instantly flipped it over and was like, "Oh, thank God!" Yeah. So, out of fixing consoles, do you prefer to fix, say, at-home consoles, or do you also like to fix handheld systems as well?
I like the home consoles a little bit more. Handhelds are fun, but part of the portability of them is how compact everything is. They're a little harder to work in, but they can also be a little more simplistic. Game Boys are relatively easy to fix. A lot of the times it's simple corrosion. Especially Game Boy Colors are notorious for their speakers going up, and that's a 2-minute fix easily. Something like a Game Gear, I have yet to work on doing like a full
Ooh.
recap or something on that.
Mhm.
I would like to do that. I would definitely give it a try if I had the opportunity. I just haven't come across one in the wild yet to pick one up.
Okay. Yeah, because Game Gear, that's a thing. I remember the last or a few episodes ago, I had some friends on. We just talked all about handhelds, and Game Gear came up a few times.
Hmm.
I mean, both in the good perspective and the bad, because 6 AA batteries were eaten up in 3 to 4 hours. So I've been kind of dying to know, what console do you just absolutely hate working on? Like, you see console at the store, or you're just anywhere out and about, and you just look, you see the box, or you see the console itself, you just go, I don't like you.
Honestly, it's probably the PS2.
Oh,
Yep. I love the console itself for the games, but the fan is terrible. The battery's hard to get to. The lasers are constantly going bad on the fat models, and that's if the disc tray isn't going bad as well. So they're just you can get one that it'll work perfectly, or it'll have literally every fault possible.
wow. The best selling console in the entire in like
Yes.
the history of video game consoles is also the most annoying to fix. Who'd have
Yep.
thunk it?
Well, there are a couple revisions too, and the later revisions are a little bit easier to get inside, but the oldest ones are packed in there pretty tightly. So
Hmm. Yeah, I can only imagine that if you and I were to ever meet IRL, and I would give you my PS2, I'm scared you're either gonna look at me dead in the eye and say, "Chuck this into a fire," or you just gotta take a sledgehammer to it. Because we all know, Sony's consoles, as in, while they function when they do function, they function great, but they are as strong as a toothpick.
yes, that's
Whereas,
unfortunately it. And I would say, yeah, they're very much like the classic case of German engineering, where they work
mhm.
wonderfully, but they're so over engineered that there's no way to do it yourself.
It's just like a gust of wind, like it falls over, then all of
Yep.
a sudden it's break. Whereas a N64, you drop a 60-pound CRT on that sucker, it works like no tomorrow. So aside from fixing consoles that you don't like, what are the ones that you just love taking apart and love working on?
Um, the Sega Genesis, especially the Model Ones, are
Really?
they're very straightforward. They're very simple. There's a handful of capacitors on them. The only downside is that a lot of them come with like bodge jobs from the factory, so there's
Mm,
always these wires running around. But generally, they're not the part that fails. They were built during the capacitor plague, so that's usually the number one issue, and then number two is going to be any kind of mechanical wear. The power port or the AV port on the back tend to get worn out from people unplugging them and plugging them back in.
hmm.
But yeah, that's
Okay.
usually about it.
That's oh wow, because I mean, forgive me for making an assumption, but because I would think that because Nintendo is normally easy, because they're durable as all hell, but also every time I would watch like your videos or and other people's videos taking apart Nintendo consoles, i.e. a Game Boy or Super Nintendo. It's very straightforward. It's like, man, that looks like an easy fix. Maybe I can do it if I had the right amount of tools. But hearing that the Genesis one's your favorite, that I was not expecting that. That's pretty cool.
Sega went for simplicity with their designs and things like that. It definitely shows, and you can really see it inside what they did. So very
Hmm.
simple. But yeah, I mean, Nintendo is too, but they tend to be slightly less prone to failure, I guess.
Yeah.
Other than maybe Game Boy screens and GameCube lasers.
Hmm. Now, speaking of screens, and also this leads me into my next slew of questions: mods. Now, with some technical know-how, people tend to, like, especially those like at-home learners such as yourself, they also tend to start modding their systems. Like, say, hey, I have an original brick Game Boy. I'm going to throw in a screen in there that's actually backlit, or I'm gonna fix my Game Gear so that screen doesn't totally suck. Have you started modding your systems at all, or do you
I
just keep it as original as possible?
I prefer to keep everything original unless it's necessary to change
Mhm.
something. I do have a Game Boy that has LCD rot in the screen, so
Mm,
despite the fact that I fixed the lines on it, it's always going to have these dark splotches, and it's not really usable, and it's just going to get worse over time. I am going to do one of the screen mods on that one. I haven't done it yet, but I think I've built up that skill level now where I feel comfortable
mhm.
enough doing it.
Okay. So you said LCD rod. I've actually never heard that term before. Do you mind describing it to me or explaining it to
Yeah.
me and those who don't know what that is?
Yep. So especially in older LCD panels, they're multi layers. They're laminated sheets of like glass and plastic with the liquid crystal and stuff in between. Eventually, the adhesive used to hold them together starts to just fail. It deteriorates. It gets dry and brittle over time, and air gets
Mhm,
in. And LCDs, especially the grayscale ones like the Game Boy, are either off or on. You have shades of gray effectively. So
mhm,
you just start. Eventually, they all just start turning black, and it just kind of spreads out from that point.
mhm. Okay, because I've heard about disc rot. Can you tell me a little bit about disc rock or
Uh,
disc rot? Blech,
Discrete, yep,
words.
exact same premise. Laser discs, CD-ROMs, DVDs, and so on. Especially the earliest ones are the same thing. It's laminated plastic with like a reflective, slightly metallic sheet in between it, and eventually the adhesive that holds them together starts coming apart as well.
Wow. Okay. Because I mean, when we get physical games, especially we trying to word this right. Can you tell I just woke up a few minutes ago? Because with physical games, because there's been a lot of talk about, or not a lot of talk, but there's been debates in circles about physical games versus digital games. Of course, I prefer team physical because I like seeing all my games on a shelf. But hearing about disc rot, because you think you have a game, like I remember my parents telling me when they would buy me a video game, say this is your game, you can have this for the rest of your life, or you can sell it. So hearing about things like disc rot or just consoles just completely breaking now kind of freaks me out. What would you say would be a good way to say prevent disc rot?
Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot you can do, but keeping it at a
Uh-oh.
keeping it at a consistent temperature is definitely going to slow it down.
Mm-hmm.
Because just like anything hot cold is going to cause it to expand and contract and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And light is probably a contributing factor and things like that. But there's not really a whole lot of I don't want to say studies. That sounds a little too official, but a lot of the evidence of it has been anecdotal. Usually, it's manufacturing defects and things like that in the CDs. If they're producing hundreds of thousands a day, one or two are going to slip through that don't meet spec, and those are probably the ones that'll succumb, where others will continue to last for decades.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, yeah, keep them at a reasonable, consistent temperature and keep them out of sunlight, and they probably should last a longer.
Oh, so essentially, me keeping my entire video game collection in a dresser sounds like a good idea, then, right?
Yeah, that should work just fine.
All right, cool. See, you're doing good. No, because it's bumming me out because unfortunately, where I record and also where I mostly play my video games, I don't have a whole lot of space to display my entire collection.
Hmm.
But I guess that's a good thing because we do have a window on the side, even though it is curtained. Sometimes light does kind of creep in. So, all right, that's good. That's good to know. So what other tips would you say? Because you fixed like a dozen or maybe 20 or so consoles. Have you implemented your own rules to keep consoles or to keep controllers nice and pristine? Is there like a definitive way that's like, hey, this is gonna make it last longer, or is just look, you're gonna use these controllers especially because obviously they wear out with time. You're constantly mashing buttons. What are some of the best ways to keep your controllers running for as long as humanly possible?
Yeah, as far as any kind of preventative maintenance goes, one, keep them clean. Something like analog sticks, they're going to stop working once they start getting gunked up and stuff like that. At some point, you probably will have to open up any controller just to clean out under the sticks, lubricate it if you can. You'll have to replace the carbon compact like rubber pads
Hmm.
eventually, because those they're being pressed down physically, so they do wear out over time. And you can almost always buy aftermarket ones that'll fit nearly any controller, at least any mainstream controller that's out there. um, and then don't knock it around. I'm sure many of us, especially as children, were guilty of throwing them against the wall when we lost and things like that. I lost a few PS2 controllers that way. So, but yeah, other than that, as long as you take care of them, don't let them get too dirty.
Hmm.
Do some proper things like the lubrication for moving parts and things like that. About the only thing you can't permanently preserve would be the original N64 controller.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Yeah, it is a plastic joystick in a plastic bowl with a plastic mechanism. It's just going to grind itself into dust no matter what you do.
Hmm.
Yeah, so they just easier to replace than worry about repairing.
Because I've seen I'm going to assume you've seen it too, because people constantly, be it on Twitter, on YouTube, constantly talk about how the N64 is just absolute. I don't want to say a monstrosity, but it kind of is a monstrosity because because you have the lawsuits for trying to play Mario Party
Yep.
where the analog stick screws up your hand. You have the third party ones that just aren't the same. So that's kind of a bummer to hear that N64 controllers was one of the most iconic video game controllers out there
Yep.
are kind of like they're no matter what they're going to be screwed.
That's exactly it. Yeah, no matter what, they're as long as you use them, they're going to continue to wear down to the point where the stick is just going to just give up and it won't have any resistance to it or anything like that. They make drop-in mods that are like the GameCube one. I've even seen online metal replacements, which should last much longer and stuff like that. But yeah, the original part inside there is it has a shelf life and it's eventually going to give up.
Do you think Nintendo fixed this problem with the new N60, like the wireless N64 controllers for the Nintendo Switch Online service, or is it still like as close to the original as possible?
I am actually super curious about that. I don't own one, so I haven't opened one up, but I want to say Spawn Wave did, but I never got around to watching that video. It's buried deep in a queue of other things to watch. But it seems like it's probably about the same thing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, me too. I haven't been able to get my hands on it since they went live. Every time I check, it was like, oh, let's see. It's been like what, a few months. It's like, son of a bitch, still sold out.
Well, give it a year or so. I mean, the NES Switch controllers just dropped to 35, so I'm sure they'll go down and they'll be everywhere at some point.
Probably. And at the same time, I saw that sale too. I saw that and I'm thinking, do I? But then my bank account, of course, is giving me the side eye. It's like, don't you freaking dare.
Same. I just bought a Japanese Saturn and a bunch of games, so I gotta wait.
Let's talk about the Saturn for a hot second. So Saturn is getting so much love recently. Over I want to say like the past year and a half. I don't know if it's just because I'm now glued into or plugged in, excuse the pun, into retro gaming Twitter and I joined the community, but almost every other day I see someone mentioning a Saturn. How did you get your Sega Saturn? And also, did you open it up?
Yes, I've definitely noticed also with that there's definitely a lot more attention on it in the last like you said, year and a half or so. It was kind of like a little bit of a hidden gem, but people weren't too interested, and then it's really exploded. I was kind of lazy. I got mine off of eBay. I was looking around. I've been meaning to buy one for a couple years, and I was actually going to get one over the summer, and then I bought a Commodore 64 instead. So I had to wait.
I remember when you bought that too.
Yep, and that's.
I think I remember you posting your Commodore on Twitter. I was like, that's cool.
Yep. So I finally got the Saturn. I've just keep checking deals, wait for the right price. One of the good things about eBay is if you do start watching a product, a lot of times the sellers will send you an offer. They did. I thought it was a good price, so I jumped on it.
Okay. Yeah, because last time I saw a Saturn in the wild, it was at a video game store, and I want to say they were asking $350 for it. This is a North American one. It wasn't a Japanese one.
Still, oof.
Yeah, big oof on the Saturns because for a split second in time, I forgot that the Saturn existed. I thought I just went from Sega Genesis to Sega Dreamcast, and then that was it. Even though I would play Virtual Fighter at my local Pizza Hut, but
I remember seeing the Saturn in like Tips and Tricks magazine and stuff like that. But I didn't know anybody that owned one. I really don't remember seeing them on the shelves in stores or anything.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder what was going through Sega's head because once again let's remember what came out during that time. The Saturn gets dropped at E3, and then a few months later, the Sony PlayStation gets announced and released here in America. Japan gets theirs first, but I only remember ever seeing ads for the PlayStation, for the N64, and eventually the Xbox. But still, the only other Sega system I would ever see advertisements for would be the Dreamcast when that was
Dreamcast.
Announced.
Yeah, that I don't know if just the North American marketing budget or just irreconcilable differences between Sega of America and Sega of Japan, because I know they were at odds with each other for years and years. So there was not a lot of marketing material or anything. I really don't remember hearing about the Saturn. We had nothing compared to the commercials they did in Japan with the I forget the guy's name.
Satoru. No, it's not. Is it Satoru? Shit. I
Yeah.
know exactly who you're talking about.
Yep.
It's the guy who
Yep.
beats up people who aren't at home playing Sega
Yep,
Saturn.
exactly. If we had that ad campaign here, it definitely would have been. It would have been in more people's homes. That's for sure.
I would have wanted a Saturn because I didn't want
Yeah.
some random Japanese guy beat me up.
Yep. Yep. I would have went for that marketing as a kid for sure.
Yeah. And also what bums me out is because apparently the Saturn had actually minus Sonic the Hedgehog, because I feel that was another nail in the coffin, because you have a brand spanking new system. There's no mainline Sonic title other than Sonic Jam, which is just
Yep.
which are just ports of the original games. Good ports, but ports nonetheless. But then you have like games like Shining Force 3, you have Panzer Dragoon Saga. Of course, you have the Virtual Fighter games. You have some beautiful looking games on the system, but no one cared.
That's that's pretty much it. Unfortunately, as you know, the RPGs were solid and things like that, but it didn't really offer anything that the competitors were, and
I mean, also once again, the $299 drop from Sony when they announced how much their console was, whereas this was back in 1994. The Saturn was $400, was $300. No, it was $399, so it would be $400. $299 was $300, and even back then, that was adjusting for inflation. That's like what, $700-800 now, give or take.
Just about something like that. Yeah, it was definitely very expensive. I don't know if the Saturns the North American ones were bundled with a game at first or not. I would assume they were.
I kind of want to say yes. Maybe Daytona US. No, Daytona USA, because that was a Saturn title. I was thinking of the what you call it, the 32X, which had a Star Wars title attached to it. But
that's right.
Yeah, I want to say it was Daytona USA, and maybe Sega Rally was a launch title. Once again, I'm a little foggy on the Saturn, but I'm kind of bummed. But I'm glad you got your Saturn. Now, what was your expectation when you opened up the Saturn for the first time?
Yeah, taking a look inside. When I got it, the first thing I did was, took it out, looked it over, made sure everything. It was DHL that delivered it, and the box was a little wrinkled, so I was expecting not great. But it was in fine condition.
Okay.
First thing was look it over, make sure nothing looks wrong. I did. Plug it in, power it on, look at it, and then try a disc, which did not work the first time I put it in. So opened it up, was looking around, playing around with things. And apparently it was as simple as the little mechanism for when you close the disk drawer that tells it the disk drawer is closed, or disk tray. They get a little bent over time. So it's a quick and easy fix. But yeah, inside it is more complicated looking than the PlayStation is, that's for sure. They have very similar looking laser assemblies and everything. So it was like, oh, okay, this looks like something I've at least seen before and everything. But just looking at the layout of the board and the other stuff that was on it, it was like, yeah, I see why this is probably a little harder to develop for. It looks like it's got a lot more going on.
Yeah, because I remember reading up on the Sega Saturn books, like say Console Wars, or even watching the many documentaries about video games. And when the Saturn does come up, they said Sega of Japan changed the entire architecture.
Yep.
And then they want to go with a new engine or a new architecture of the system, which of course developers were like, what? I mean, sure, they were going with disc-based games, which made developers a little easier to develop for, rather than Nintendo sticking with cartridges. But that's another topic for another time. But still, it's a bummer where Sega had a pretty beefy system, because I've never held a Saturn before, but seeing pictures of Saturns, like say next to a PlayStation 2, that thing looks like it'd eat a PlayStation for breakfast.
It's surprisingly large for what it is. There's the footprint of the N64 and probably about the height of PS2, I would say.
Yeah, like in the fat model PS2s as well, because that thing is beefy, and I can only imagine it's super heavy too.
It is, yeah, it is surprisingly heavy. I mean, the Dreamcast is too, so it's like super dense inside, but you get used to something like a PlayStation, which probably the heaviest part in it is the disc mechanism itself, and the rest is all quite light. But yeah, the Saturn is surprisingly heavy.
Yeah, I mean, I was recently doing some research on a system called the Sega Pluto, which was like a beefed up version of the Saturn, which actually had a hard drive and an internet modem built in. But of course, it's like, yay, I couldn't even that big. It's a big honking thing.
It was, yeah, it's at least the couple that I've seen online. They look like a DVD player from the time. Like they would go on a shelf with stereo equipment.
They
So, yeah.
Oh man, you the second you said DVD player, I just got flashbacks to when my family got their first DVD player, and it looks just like a Sega Saturn. Oh my gosh! Or it could have looked like a Sega Saturn. It's just it had a disc tray instead of an open the top thing.
Yep.
So, aside from cleaning and opening up the insides of a video game console, obviously we can't really open up a video game disc because that would destroy the game. But do you like also opening up video game cartridges, like say NES, SNES, Genesis? What are some of your favorite cartridges to work on, or just to like open up and see what's inside?
Yeah, I open up every single cartridge and clean it. I have a just kind of like standard list that I follow down, just cleaning the shell, the board, the pins, and so on, and looking for any kind of damage or anything that might be
Mhm.
inside. Um, Favorite is probably NES cartridges.
Hmm.
They open easily, they're pretty straightforward and simple. There's not a whole lot that goes wrong, and then every time you're still kind of reminded that, the board is this big and a cartridge that tall. And you're just like, "Oh yeah, that's right. These are basically just Famicom boards, and Famicom cartridges are, about a third of the height."
I feel like it does the biggest lie when the
Yeah.
first time I ever saw the inside of the NES cartridge, it was online and they open it up and I'm like, what? I actually
Yep.
because I have my NES right here in the dresser next to me, and I even just like was holding my copy of Super Mario Bros. Duck Hunt. I was like, you're only go up to here, but because
Yep.
as a kid you see a cartridge, you think the whole cartridge is like used.
I mean,
So
it's got to be, right? Yeah, why would it be so big if they didn't have to fill up all of that space? But yeah.
yeah, man, that's gotta that's to me that's just nuts. So it was moving on from how there's a lot of wasted space in NES cartridges. Um, Cleaning carts. I know there's like 20 or 50 different ways from cleaning
Yep.
carts, and that aren't you taking the cartridge and go, doing the thing that
Yep.
we're taught to do in the 90s. So, to those who do not know, can you explain why blowing into your cartridge is a bad thing and you should not do it?
Moisture and metal don't mix. That's
Okay.
the simplest way to put it. Yeah, you're putting your breath and spit onto the pins, which are bare. I guess they're
Mhm,
copper, brass pins, bronze pins. And every time you do that, you're getting it a little bit wet, and that's going to oxidize the surface just a little bit more.
mhm. Even though so many people do, like, I'm sure you've seen people wear it with T-shirts that say "Blow Me" and it's an NES
Yep.
cartridge on it, or even like one of the most recent examples I can think of is I forgot the artist. Was it Kid Cudi? No, or whoever did the music video for the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Like right when that music video starts, it's him blowing into a Sonic the
Yep.
Hedgehog cartridge, and I'm just sitting there going, "You're not supposed to do that."
No, it's a yeah, it is a cultural meme or trope at this point. It's pretty well known with anybody that's grown up since the 80s.
Hmm. I mean, unfortunately, there are times I'm still kind of guilty of that. Even though I know you're not supposed to do it. It's ingrained in my DNA. I'm sorry,
Yes,
Zoe.
it's a hard habit to break. Yeah, something you've been doing, all your life, couple of decades, few decades.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's gonna take at least half as long to break that habit. So
Yeah, so forgive me, Zoe, for I have sinned. But so going online and just watching, like when people say, "Hey, you don't blow into the cartridges," they instantly say isopropyl alcohol is like the best way to clean the pins. Would you recommend isopropyl alcohol, or is there another solution you would rather use?
I mean, that's gonna be the all around best. You can use water and a paper towel as long as you make sure that it's adequately dry before you try it out or anything, or just wipe it
Mhm,
off and make sure it's all dry. But yeah, it's
mhm,
isopropyl alcohol. Ideally, 91 and up are best, just because of how quickly they'll dry. But you can get by with like 70% or something. And just make sure everything's dry. Give it time.
mhm. Yeah, because I assume that isopropyl alcohol that evaporates a lot quicker than obviously water.
Yes,
So that
exactly.
way you can, like, say if you need to clean the system or clean a game, you can like wash off the pins, plug it in, and boom.
Yep.
Because I've seen YouTubers who deep clean systems and consoles, and they just take like a Q-tip with isopropyl alcohol and just douse. I mean, they don't douse it, but they cover the whole board, the
Yep.
circuits, the chips, and everything, and that freaks me out because my brain goes it's like Pokemon brain where it's like water plus electronic components bad.
Instinctively, yeah, you don't want to pour liquid onto any kind of electronics. The more comfortable you get with it, though, I don't know if you've seen Adrian Black on YouTube, and he fixes a lot of microcomputers and vintage computers and stuff like that. He'll put the whole motherboard in the dishwasher to clean it.
What?
Yep, it works. It works fine. Yeah.
Excuse me,
You.
Zoe. The dishwasher
Yes.
of all places.
Yep.
Why?
It works. It gets all of the cracks. It gets under all of the components and everything like that. They come out absolutely pristine every single time.
Does it take the chips off, or are they still on?
No, I mean, if there's anything particularly fragile, I'm pretty sure he doesn't put it in there. But other than that, no, it generally the water's not too bad. And I mean, I've run boards underwater and stuff too.
Mhm.
As long as again everything is nice and dry before you put power to it,
Right.
it
Right.
shouldn't be an issue.
I mean, once again, this is just completely showing my ignorance and of technical expertise. But I mean, putting a motherboard in a dishwasher to me is like the most ludicrous thing you do. I feel like that's something like a 5-year-old would try.
Yes.
Like, oh, Daddy,
Yep.
I cleaned your motherboard for you, or something like that. It's
Everything we're taught about electronics and how it doesn't mix with water, and then it just it works so surprisingly well.
because I mean, I get scared when I'm around somewhere and I have my phone out. I mean, yeah, it's like I think the 10Rs might have some water resistance. I think I can't
Yes.
remember exactly, but I don't try to throw it chuck into a fountain just
Yep.
to see if it works.
Yep. Again,
Oh,
it's just it goes against literally everything that we've kind of been taught culturally about how electronics work and components and things like that. I know I was definitely guilty when I was younger of like, oh no, something got wet or left out in the rain or something like that.
Mhm.
It's ruined now and would have just thrown it away. But now most things, I mean, someone leaves a system or a CRT or something out in the rain for a few days. You don't want to bring it home, just give it a few days inside to dry, and it's probably going to work just fine.
And just so essentially, the shortage happens when you add power to a wet system. That's how
Yep.
it short circuits.
Yep, because water is conductive and it will cause, it'll jump or short.
Mhm.
So,
Oh, look at that. We're learning something new today. I mean, of course, huge disclaimer here. Base Arcade Pause Menu does not recommend anyone chucking their electronics
No.
into water for any good
No.
reason.
Yeah, don't do it unless you absolutely have to. Isopropyl and a toothbrush is usually the best way to go.
Yeah, because I've also seen, I want to say Nintendo talked about this other brand. I want to say it's One Up. It's like a cleaning card where it gets where you don't have to take the board apart. Because for me, that's the scary part is taking a console apart. Now, I did say I took apart my PlayStation 2 before, but that was to try and fix it so I can get a bloody game to work. I haven't opened it since, and I probably should open it because it is dusty as hell. But every time I see a system or I see games, like even when I'm watching YouTubers like Metal Jesus or other YouTubers who go to video game, because I'm going to a video game convention at the end of February, and one thing I'm scared about is buying a game only to realize that that's a repro, that's a fake. And people say, "Oh, bring this screwdriver and open up." But I'm still so scared to open up a game cart just to make sure it's a legitimate game cart.
I mean, depending on the system, it's not too bad. Game Boys only have one screw. That's not the worst thing ever. NES, 3 to 5, depending. Genesis are 2. N64 just 2 to get into the cartridge, and then 2 more to get rid of the shielding. So those are a little more complicated. But yeah, most are pretty straightforward. But honestly, the hard part of that is how do you tell somebody like, "Hey, I don't trust you. Let me open this cartridge you're trying to sell me." That can get a little awkward.
Yeah, it's weird. Well, although sometimes people because I found other ways to like double check and see if a game is legit or not. Like especially for Game Boy, because I've been collecting a lot of Game Boy games recently because they're small. I can easily store them unlike some other titles. NES carts, I'm looking at you. I love you, but you're big giant space wasters now. Your board is bloody half an inch tall. Because on Game Boy carts, they have a number imprinted on them. Like if you could find a number imprint somewhere, and this is Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance.
Yep.
You find that imprint, then it's a legitimate title. Or also you can look up above the pins, you can just barely read Nintendo.
Yep. Yeah, with Game Boys and a couple of others, you can kind of spot when it happens and everything. With that being said, some of the repros, honestly, I'm just going to say fakes in this situation, are getting pretty good, especially Pokemon titles.
Oh Lord.
Some have the stamp. The Nintendo Gold Seal matches color almost perfectly. About the only difference is, yeah, the Nintendo printed on the board isn't going to be there, so you really do have to look hard at some of those.
Mm-hmm. I mean, not gonna lie, because every time I've gone to the habit, especially for Game Boy Advance games, because those games are now just like jumping up in price like everything else in this world. Because there are a few sellers I trust and I like, and they do say, yeah, we open them up, we clean the carts, we make sure it's authentic. But even then, because there are times I'm looking at it, I'm trying to find the stamp, and I hit the seller's like, it's real, trust me. I'm like, it's like, dude, come on, it's real. It's like, yeah, I know, I just wanted to. It's for my own satisfaction.
Exactly. It's for your own peace of mind, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I've been lucky that if I've questioned at the retro game stores that I've gone to, or like, we can open it if you want. Like, I got the screwdriver, so
yeah.
But if they offer, that's usually enough for me to be like, yeah, I trust you. Then that's fine.
Yeah, because I remember, like, once again, Metal Jesus, and a few other YouTubers, not classic YouTubers, that's classic video game, retro game YouTubers would say if normally a seller who is legit and wants to sell you a real copy of a game, they normally should have no problem with you opening up just to double check.
Exactly.
Because also that's peace of mind for the seller, and of course peace of mind for the buyer. And it's like, hey, if I can make a sale out of this game, I gotta make sure it's legitimate. Because if I were a seller, because when I used to work at a toy store, we had and this isn't video game related, but it's Pokemon card related. We had Pokemon cards for sale. And one time a kid walks in the store and we had this huge stack of Pokemon cards on the side, and it was like $5 for $1. And they're all common cards, super cheap. So this kid's like rummaging through them, and he's like picking a few out, and he comes up to me, he's like, hey, just to let you know, these are fake cards. And I'm like, what do you mean they're fakes? He's like, yeah, they're not real. So of course I like feel a real card, and he's telling, it felt weird. Because normally, I'm 31 years old. I grew up with Pokemon. I should be teaching this kid how to find a fake, and that it's the opposite. And I feel, oh crap. So then, of course, when a customer would come in and ask to see the rare Pokemon cards, and we had 3 Charizards in the back that our owner priced at $20 each, and I would feel horrible if I sold him a fake card. So I told him beforehand, like, look, I'm gonna double check to see if these are fakes. And I checked, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure these are fakes. I do not feel comfortable selling these to you because I don't want to sell you a fake card. Of course, when my manager comes in, I tell him, I was like, look, these are fake cards. We should not be selling these fakes, or if we do, we have to tell them they're fakes.
Yep.
So yeah, that was a bit of a sorry for that.
No,
tangent.
it's totally true. I've hung out in plenty of comic shops. I've come across the fake Magic the Gathering and Pokemon cards as well. But I think, especially with I'm assuming the volume and scale that you guys dealt with them, it's probably a lot easier to slip past if you're dealing with hundreds of cards in a day than being the one person there once a week looking through the stack of cards.
Yeah. I asked the owner of the store, it's like, hey, where'd you get these Pokemon cards? Because a lot of these rare ones that we're charging a decent chunk of money, I mean, $20 for a Charizard is like a dream right now, but still, it's like, hey, we're charging this amount of money, and we're selling fakes. So we got how are you getting these? And it's, oh, we're just getting them at conventions. Like, well, there's your problem right there. Eventually, because I brought this issue up, we actually took those binders off the table, and we just resorted to selling Pokemon. Like actual real TCG booster packs.
Yep.
And yeah, because luckily I didn't get in a lot of trouble that day, because he was like, we need to sell. I was like, dude, I'm not selling fake cards.
I mean, that's, it's probably going to cost some money, but it's probably better for business in the long run if people aren't going to, feel like they're getting ripped off.
Yeah, but unfortunately that store went under anyway, and a new guy took over, so.
Okay.
Either way, but going back to, say, fake video games, I know one way to spot a fake is, of course, look at the label, try to find a stamping on Nintendo. But when you do, like, say you bring your was it a tri-tip screwdriver? That sounds.
It depends on what Game Boy Advance cartridges use the tri-wing. Otherwise, Game Bit is what Nintendo and Sega Genesis cartridges used. Master System were Philips. But yeah, the game bits, which are kind of like are they like an octagon or hexagon shaped kind of bit?
Okay. I could probably pull one up right now.
Yeah,
You said for Super Nintendo, right?
Yep, Super Nintendo, Nintendo N64. Yeah, I've got mine within arm's reach as well.
Actually, I can't even find the. Oh wait, no, never mind. Oh yeah, right. So this is my roommate's copy of Fatal Fury. Audio members, I'm sorry you won't be able to see this, but yeah, the screws on a Super Nintendo cartridge they don't have a divot inside. The screwdriver has to fit around the screw. And what kind of screwdriver is that?
Generally referred to as game bit. I'm sure it's got a
Okay.
proper actual designation, but everybody everywhere just calls it game bit.
Okay. Yeah, because I know for GBAs or tri-wings. So where would you get you can just like get these screwdriver bits at or these screwdrivers at, let's say, Ace or a regular hardware store, or do you have to specifically go to
No,
the store to get them?
you're gonna have to buy them online, but you can get them from pretty much any larger retailer, Amazon, eBay, anything like that shouldn't be an issue. Honestly, eBay is gonna be the cheapest. You can get a pair of screwdrivers for like $4 shipped from China.
Hmm.
Or you can get bits for $2 or $3, and then just put them in your own screwdriver.
I might just have to do that because I might be because I've been wanting to get a screwdriver with this so I can once again go, because every time these YouTubers with they're saying, like, if you go to a video game convention or you go to a trade show, bring your own screwdriver. It's going to save you a lot of heartache in the long run. So when you open up a board, like when you open up a game cartridge, what's the first thing you need to look for to say that is a fake? I'm not going to purchase that.
Branding probably. Like you said, the Nintendo logo, Sega logos. A lot of custom chips are going to have whatever company's branding on them. Sony manufactures chips for everybody, so those might be in everything. But Nintendo has custom chips, Sega has custom chips with their own logos on it and stuff like that. And then the other is an actual like chip with pins on it versus the epoxy blob, just like that black dot.
Blob, yeah.
Yep.
Because I've seen pictures of blobs on Twitter and on YouTube, but because I didn't know what it was called, I just know that is the biggest red flag for that's a fake cartridge, because no official cartridge would ever have those blobs on them. Correct?
There might be some Game Boy games and some Game Boy Advance games that used them from like really cheap companies that were official cards still, but for the most part, you should not be seeing that.
Okay. Because I can only imagine just seeing this big black blob. I mean, of course, luckily with reproduction cartridges, or officially licensed reproduction cartridges, they will say repros on them.
Yep.
I mean, it might be small print, but they'll say this is a reproduction. And there's this other store that I go to. They'll sell repros, but they'll straight up tell you this is a repro. This is a fake cart. The ROM is there. The game works, but this is not an official licensed copy.
Yeah, as long as it's presented as such, I've never seen an issue with that. But it's the difference between like a repro and a fake is trying to pass off a Pokemon Yellow for $60 to $80 when it's clearly a brand new production one.
That makes me so mad, to be perfectly honest. It's like, I understand that even to this day, like Pokemon Red, you can still get Pokemon Red and Blue and even Yellow version as a digital download for the 3DS for like what, $5-7 maybe?
Yeah, I think it's like 7 or 8 per. Yeah,
it's like $5 for the original one, $7 for Gold, Silver, and Crystal. So you can get that, but those cartridges are still going for their weight in gold.
And they're not even particularly rare. I know the demand is high, so the price is high, but there's it's the best-selling franchise of all time. There are tens of millions of those carts out there.
Yeah, because I remember because Pokemon Silver, that's my favorite Pokemon game, and I will die on the hill that it's the best Pokemon game ever made. Fight me, please don't. But one thing that I think the first time I've ever had a cart mechanically fail on me is the dreaded save battery.
Yep.
Because one day I found my silver version. I don't know what it was doing in my brother's room, but it was. I had my silver version. I beat the Elite Four. I was right in the middle of Kanto. I plug it in, turn it on, and it just goes new game.
Yep.
No continue, just new game options, and it broke my heart. And I had no idea how to fix this. I must have been like 11 or 13 at the time.
Okay.
And I had no idea how to fix it. So when it comes to watch battery saves, can you just like take the card apart and just swap the battery out, or what's the best way to fix those cartridges?
That's pretty much it, but you do have to get the right size, and you want batteries with the tabs already on them. You can attach the tabs, but touching a battery with a soldering iron, it's easier to buy ones with the tabs already attached.
Okay. When
And
you
then
say what do you mean by tabs?
so they're like a normal 1616. Sometimes they're a 2026, which are the measurements of the battery.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have little metal tabs on the positive and negative that go in opposite directions.
Mm-hmm.
And then there should be holes in the board where those attach. So that way they'll sit flush against the board, but still have the pins to go down into the contacts.
Okay. Because I mean, what call it? What's a game that has a save battery? Like Pokemon, not Pokemon. Well, yeah, Pokemon, but I'm talking.
Pokemon, yeah,
like Pokemon, but also I'm trying to think of a one where I can actually see the battery itself, like the translucent Game Boy Color games, like
Game
Pokemon
Colors,
Crystal.
yep.
There we go.
Yep.
There you go. Pokemon Crystal. That has a save battery. Like you can see the save battery.
Yep.
So because when I see that, I thought, okay, just to go swap, done. But now that I need the actual pins or ones with the tabs, so now I know what to look for. And once again, can you walk into Home Depot and get those, or do you have to go to a specialty or another hardware store? Or
I've never seen them in stores, but I wouldn't be surprised if they showed up in some, probably more hobbyist type stores.
Okay.
Miss Radio Shack. But
rest in peace,
yeah,
Radio Shack.
yeah, but no, online is easier because you can still probably get them in bulk as well, which is just it. You know, you're gonna pay $3 or $4 for one battery, or $5 for 5 of them, or something like that.
That's probably why because a store I went to, or not really a store, but like a booth at a trade show I go to. Like if you ever come out to California, hit me up. I'll take you to this place. Really cool place. It's like a nerd swap meet. It's awesome. They also do some booths also do video game repairs. They do system repairs. Like, you like my Game Boy Advance, it was reshelled, but the battery wasn't very good. So they had battery packs for Game Boy Advances, PSPs. So if you still had the original battery, but you need a new one because it was dying and it was old, they can swap it out and fix it right there on the spot. Because I've seen like these. So I think that's where they get them because I've never seen these in like actual stores before. But it's like, hey, here's a rechargeable battery pack for these systems.
Yep.
And it even comes with the screwdriver you need to, which I think is actually pretty sweet.
I have done 2 SPs and a original Fat DS battery, and yeah, they all come with a little tri-wing screwdriver, whatever you need. Yeah,
because I can only imagine like the other problem when you want to open up like either a console or a game cartridge is you need the right screwdriver, and every single one of these games or these cartridges, they all have different screwdrivers.
Yep. And any kind of security bit they could find at the time, to keep the consumer out.
Yeah, because Lord knows they don't want anyone getting into here and to play around with it. Maybe hack it. I don't know how people did stuff in the early 90s, and I was alive during that time.
That I don't understand. Somehow people were ripping ROMs off of cartridges. I don't quite understand how they did that back then, but it somehow.
Yeah. So we've talked about fixing your consoles, or we talked about the consoles you've worked on, and even tips and tricks on how to keep your games and your game carts clean. What's one console or computer or just any electronic that you really just want to sink your teeth into and just really dissect and learn the innards of it?
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting one. It's still probably my white whale console, which would be the Famicom Titler.
Oh, I'm trying to think. I think I've heard is the Famicom Titler. That's obviously a Japan only system.
Yes.
Was that No, that wasn't a 2-in-1, was it?
Kind of. It's not like the Sharp Twin where it was Famicom cartridges and Famicom disc cartridges. But a Titler is a machine that you would hook up to your VCR, or like between a pair of VCRs, so that you could superimpose text into tapes, or you could even add like transition effects, graphics, things like that into it. Someone in Japan decided the Famicom had the power to be one of those, so it was a Famicom with the the editing hardware built into it.
And this was back in the 80s?
Yep.
What the damn hell? That is Wow.
it's a weird combo, but it's such a cool looking system, and it's got the Famicom board, and it should be pretty straightforward and simple. But
Hmm.
it's got a little, very very little like capacitive window for writing in Japanese on it, so you could do handwritten text. And then it's got a full keyboard and number pad on it for typing things out and everything. So I'm very curious because it looks to be about that big. So it's like the Famicom is that big of a board. I wonder what the rest of it is.
Can only imagine that thing. I mean, if Nintendo decides to pull an NES cartridge on us, I would just be like, why? You're wasting so much real estate here, Nintendo. Come on. I mean, at least now with the Switch cartridges that are like super tiny and small,
Yep.
and then they can fit giant ass games on it, like Breath of the Wild on one of those bloody things. It's like technology. But I mean, now that I think about it, that doesn't seem so far fetched, because then there's a sewing machine with a Game Boy Color in
Yep.
it. And I thought that was one of the weirdest peripherals for any video game consoles. Like, here's a Game Boy Color, and here's a sewing machine you could put your Game Boy Color in. It's like, what use is this for?
It sounds so wild, but I think about it from a manufacturing standpoint. Instead of building all your own, custom hardware, your own boards, sourcing chips and everything like that, if you can take something that has the processing power to do it that already exists, why would you not? You just build an accessory for it. Yeah.
Might as well. I mean, I think, are you familiar with the Gaming Historian at all?
Yes.
He did a video on, once again, another, it wasn't even a game. It was just a periphery for the Game Boy, which was a fish sonar. It was for fishermen to try and find fish in a lake or in a lake. I was like, this came out for the Game Boy.
Yep.
This thing existed.
I'll say there's also one for the Wonder Swan, which is a little more rare than that one even.
I mean, I believe it. I mean, I remember my rest in peace, my grandfather, he had an LCD Tiger Electronic fishing game, and my brother and I loved that fishing game, even though we didn't. I have some Tiger LCD games, but that for some reason that fishing game just worked, and it of course looked like a fishing pole. Of course, we're sitting in his easy chair, we're casting, we're trying to reel it in, but seeing a cartridge that you can plug into a Game Boy, toss a thing into the water, and it's a sonar. It's like, hey, go here, find the fish. But I mean, you would think the sewing machine would boggle my mind even more. And now to learn that there's a machine out there with a Famicom board that was also used to put subtitles in VHS tapes. It's like, what? Man, kind of makes you wonder why a bunch of these never came out, huh?
Yeah. I at least in the case of the Titler, it's real specialty equipment. Although the height of camcorders, I'm sure everybody wanted to put "Happy Birthday" or what have you in their videos. But yeah, a couple of them where it's like, again, from a manufacturing standpoint, it makes sense to use someone else's hardware. But is like the demographic that's going to go out on a fishing boat with a sonar, the same one that's going to own a Game Boy.
I mean, whoever did buy that, I can only imagine, like, poor little Timmy is fishing with his dad or his grandpa or whomever. Like Timmy and Susie, they're playing competitive Tetris, and then whomever they're with just decides to snatch one of their Game Boys, toss it in, and they accidentally drop the Game Boy in the water. I can only imagine. I can only imagine that's happened at least once or twice in the span of its existence.
It has to have. Yeah, it has to have.
I'm going to say that's an accident and not an angry parent just chucking a Game Boy in the water because the kids were misbehaving. And also, I would not be caught dead taking a Game Boy out on a boat.
No, I'd rather not. Yeah.
I mean, if I'm playing Game Boy, I'm staying on the shore. I'm not going out in the water with it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but also I'm of age, so I can also enjoy the alcohol. That probably helps. But anyways, I think we're wrapping up here because I really don't have a whole lot of other technical questions. But since we're talking about like crazy ideas mixing with consoles, can you think of a console and just a crazy thing, like maybe not like as out there as a sewing machine or a fish sonar, but another piece of technology you think would have worked well with the video game system?
Ooh,
like when you were talking earlier about the putting subtitles on VHS tapes, that makes sense to me in a weird way. I mean, not to say that and if I were to see a Game Boy using a sewing machine using a Game Boy, I could say, okay, I could see how that works, or the fish sonar one. But maybe something along the lines like, hey, I can use this to play my games, but also I can use it to do X, Y, and Z.
Honestly, it'd probably be pretty hilarious if something mixed together with like a VCR. So if we got, video CD with like the CDI, and we got DVD with the PlayStation 2, we didn't really have anything for cassette media tapes, or videotapes or cassette tapes, music tapes either. Mixing the two together would probably be hilarious.
Yeah, because I can't remember how we found out that PlayStations could play audio CDs right out of the box. I don't know if I want to say that was just like a schoolyard rumor that my brother heard. He comes home, we try it, and then we were just like, oh my God, it works.
I think we probably turned it on with the lid open or no game in it just to see what it did, and saw the menu pop up, and it was like, oh,
whoops.
But no, because I think I had a Sega CD beforehand. Yeah, I had a Sega CD beforehand, and I knew that played music CDs. So I think we were testing to see if the PlayStation did.
Okay, because I mean, now these things are just like, oh yeah, of course it could play that. Although now I'm kind of curious if my PS4 can play a music CD. I mean, it should, right?
It should, yeah. Blu-ray should read the same. It should be able to read Blu-ray, DVD, and CDs.
I mean, it reads DVDs and Blu-rays, but still, it's a fascinating that technology that you and I grew up with. Like I would laugh because now that I think about it, seeing a Sega Master System with a tape deck attached to it would be hilarious.
That'd be great. Yeah, the Master System looks good too. It would look like a nice piece of hardware on a stereo shelf.
It would, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would definitely give it a cool look, cool vibe.
Yeah, I mean, although I do wish, I mean, if I knew about the JVC XI, because I think that system is that's like Sega messed up on their Genesis Sega CD on their combo system, whereas that XI, oh, that's a gorgeous piece of hardware.
Yeah, those things look fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, man, you would think Sega would be the one to actually make their own products better as a 2-in-1 or even a 3-in-1, but no.
Same went with Nintendo. I don't know why, but yeah, the Sharp Twin Famicom is just so much more attractive than either the Famicom or the FDS. So
you know what? I think that when you mentioned the Titler, thank you.
Yes.
Why was I saying Tigress? Yeah, the Titler. Why can I not say his name?
That's
the thing you said.
Yes.
I was thinking of the Twin Famicom because I have seen that before. So now I know what I'm talking about. But yeah, you would think that Sega or Nintendo would be able to make these systems. It's like, hey, here's an all-in-one Sega Genesis. It plays 32X, Sega CD, no problems whatsoever. I want to say they were trying to do that with the Neptune, but then of course it just fell flat because the Saturn was out and everyone was trying to go for the Sega was really trying to push the Saturn, but we all know what happened there.
Yep.
And if only the Dreamcast could play DVDs, we would be in a different world right now.
Yeah, if it had been a year or two later, absolutely, they would have reversed that somehow, and definitely made it the DVD player.
Yeah, but oh well. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love my PlayStation 2. To me, the PS2 is the GOAT. It's the highest selling console for a reason because it was a cheaper DVD player and also had an amazing library of games. But the Sega Dreamcast had Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2, and the PlayStation didn't.
Yep. Sonic, Seaman, Crazy Taxi.
I got Crazy Taxi and Sonic Adventure 2 for Christmas with the year I got my Dreamcast. It was so good. I never even heard of Crazy Taxi before. I plugged that sucker in after I played Sonic Adventure 2. I'm like, I'm gonna try Crazy Taxi. I plug that in and I hear yeah. I'm like, what is this?
It just screams at you the moment you open the cartridge with all the Offspring music and everything like that, and you're just like, I'm ready. I am so ready.
I downloaded that song on my phone because I was like looking through Offspring because I was on a big Offspring kick when their album it's the one with You're Gonna Go Far Kid, Hammerhead, that album of theirs that launched in 2008, 2009, also known as the year I graduated high school. I was on a huge Offspring kick because I loved that album. And then I'm like going through their songs and I say, wait a minute, this sounds familiar. Click. Oh my God, this is on Crazy Taxi.
Yep.
Those are the good old days. But anyways, Zoe, thank you so much for coming on and teaching all of us how to properly take care of our consoles and our systems. So where can people find you on the internet?
Twitter is probably the quickest and easiest, which is at RetroZo _. YouTube should also just be RetroZo, which been a little back on posting, but I'll catch back up to that. But yeah, Twitter is going to be the quick and easiest way for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's where you and I met on Twitter.
Yep.
It's like, man, take a shot every time I mention someone who comes on this. Like literally almost only one person I can think of. No, two people who have been guests on the show outside of my friends from. Actually, no, I lied. Three people outside of my co-host on the Fake Nerd podcast. I've known otherwise. Everyone else through Twitter.
Yep. Yeah, it's the gathering hub for the retro gaming community for sure. So.
Yeah, and we found some good people on there. Thank goodness. Mm-hmm. But anyways, so yeah, go ahead, give Retro Zoe a follow. I am Ben Magnet. You can find me at BenMagnet27 on Instagram and Twitter. And also you can find me writing for oldschoolgamermagazine.com and on the print edition. I'm getting published finally. Woo! So I can finally say that. I'm not just writing for the website. I'm writing for the magazine as well. So hooray for that. I don't know how else to close out. Anyways, follow Fake Nerd Podcast here on YouTube. Like and subscribe, all that jazz. Give this audio show a 5-star and subscribe. And yeah, fakenerdpodcast.com. Everything is on there for this show, for the main show. Just go ahead and follow. Just go ahead and go there, and all your Fake Nerd needs will be met. And Zoe, thank you again so much for coming on. This has been a blast, and I wish I was taking notes. I don't know why I wasn't.
At least I have the recording to go back over. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, that was super fun.
Of course. So. And yeah, so once again, go ahead, follow her. She's awesome. I love every time she posts stuff from I think, did you post something about a Vectrex console or was that someone else?
Not a Vectrex, not in the collection yet. One day.
The keyword there being yet, but
yep.
I would like this. I don't know why I have a morbid curiosity about a Vectrex system because that's like an actual TV, a CRT TV with a controller next to it. I was like, how? I just want to know how. But anyways, once again, thank you so much for coming on. And for now, unpause.